Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
I wouldn't have believed in a million years that I'd have mental health issues. You know, I was so happy in my life. And when you actually find out that it's so common, there are ways of managing it. And I owe the NHS for that.
For them, they're going to work and they're doing what they're trained to do. But it's genuinely like changing lives and saving lives, isn't it, the work that they're doing?
I'll always remember just Tom as Tom, you know. He made such an impact and his personality was so big, it's difficult to think of anything else.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. It's Mental Health Monday. My name's Mick. I hope you well. Thanks for checking out the podcast. Thanks for your downloads as ever. And we've got a great guest for you this week. He is Max George, a singer with the band The Wanted. He's also a radio presenter on the Hits Radio Network with his Friday night hit show. Max has had a really difficult time of it of late, recently losing bandmate Tom Parker to a brain tumour. You'll know about that story if you follow the world of showbiz. Really, it's tragic, given that he was only 33 years of age, you know, a dad and a husband as well. To lose his life at such an age is an absolute tragedy. And of course, that has ramifications and impacts on the people around him, not least his family, of course, but also his bandmates, one of them, of course, being Max George. We'll talk about that. Max himself has also been really honest as well in the past about his own anxiety and depression, things that he suffered with from a very early age in his career, moments at which he thought, you know what, I'm doing really well, I'm successful, I'm getting everything I ever wanted, and yet something was not quite right. Max explains as part of the podcast today around how diagnosis came about and about how it wasn't as simple as he thought it might have been, even not having a clue that it was a mental health issue that he was going through. I was catching up with Max because he's supporting the O2 and their Concert for Carers series. So what they're doing there is basically Concert for Carers is a registered charity promoting mental health and well-being of NHS staff and paid care workers. And what it does is provides access to free music tickets all year round. So you might get NHS staff who get to go and see Queen or Liam Gallagher or Shawn Mendes or someone like that, courtesy of Concerts for Carers. It's a really great thing to do. And of course, given the last 2 years that NHS staff and carers have had, I think it's a really prominent one. Speaking to him just ahead of Thank You Day as well. So it was about saying thank you to those NHS staff, but also thanks to those NHS staff who supported Max through his journey. And I started off by asking him about his own journey and asking him about how interactions with NHS staff really made a difference to him.
Yeah, so when I first started having pretty bad symptoms, I didn't know it was a mental health issue. I just thought that I'd become quite ill about 12 years ago. And it was through the NHS that where I found out that it was a mental health issue that I was having. And they put me on to speak to a counsellor. And I think from that day forward, I was able to manage my situation, never cure it. I don't think there is a cure, but certainly manage it. And I learned so much just from opening up that first time, and realizing that it's a really normal thing. You know, mental health, having a mental health issue is so common, and I have them to thank for that, because without that opening conversation, I really don't know where I'd be right now and where I'd be up to in terms of my mental health.
And in terms of the sort of the knowledge and the expertise of these individuals, I think I'm right in saying that you were having like all kinds of like physical checks, weren't you, for something that was physically, you know, a problem. And it was their knowledge and expertise that went, actually, there might be something else happening here, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had like privately, I'd been for like scans and all sorts, and but it was the people of the NHS that just said, you don't need to be having any of that. What you need to do is go and speak to a counsellor, and you need to talk about you. And at first I was like, what? But it really worked. Like I wouldn't have believed in a million years that I'd have mental health issues. You know, I was so happy in my life and achieving everything I've wanted to achieve, and yet I've just been told, well, your mental health isn't right at the moment. So yeah, it was a strange one, but when you actually find out, and you find out that it's, like I say, it's so common, there are ways of managing it, and I owe the NHS for that, and that's that's why personally doing this campaign with O2 and Concert for Carers is so close to me, because it gives them the opportunity to have a night out and watch their favourite artists, and music can bring so many people together and put smiles on faces. And being from music myself, it's a great campaign to be part of, and it makes me smile thinking of all those NHS workers that are gonna be watching the likes of Liam Gallagher or Billie Eilish like they have so far. I just think it's it's a small thing, but I think it's a really cool gesture.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those people as well. I mean, for them, they're going to work and they're doing what they're trained to do, but it's genuinely like changing lives and saving lives, isn't it? The work that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think back to certainly like a year and a half, 2 years ago when lockdown came in, it was horrendous for everyone. But it was hardest surely for them, because they were still there. They were still working every day on the front line, putting themselves in the midst of it all and trying to save lives whilst just being completely selfless. And that's what our NHS are. And we're so lucky to have them. I've lived in other countries, and it just is not like what we have. We are so lucky to have them, and we should thank them. And Sunday is Thank You Day, and everyone should show their appreciation for them.
Absolutely. I think you were in the States, weren't you, when you first got a sense that there might be an issue that you needed to get sorted? And the difference between being there compared to being here financially is huge, isn't it? We take that for granted because we've just grown up with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a different world in that sense.
Can I share how you've been sort of more recently, Max? I mean, people will be aware of what happened to your bandmate Tom and the tragic circumstances there, which is a difficult time for anyone. Of course, you're keeping on top of your own mental health at that time, but grief can sort of open up all kinds of issues as well. And I'd wondered if you'd felt that you were equipped for that better than you had been before, and what those difficult moments might have been in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been difficult moments, especially over the last 12 months, but I've had things to focus on, like when we did the tour and Tom was with me, like that was just really lovely, and to spend that time with him. So I didn't have time to think of the negatives. Obviously then when the day happened, it's been extremely painful since then, and it's still very raw, but I'm just trying to focus on doing good things. And like Tom's book's out this week, and I said that I'd help out with that as much as I can, and even reading parts of it. Some parts I can't read, but there are parts of it that I read where stories from his eyes, like the way he saw things, which we experienced together, but I have my own take on things. And now I have this book where I can read what his take on stuff was, and it's so lovely. Like I'm learning new things as well about him, and it's almost like creating new memories in a way, because I'm reading his take of something, and I can picture myself being there. So I'm just trying to focus on positive stuff and doing good things moving forward. And look, it's been a terrible few weeks, and I'm sure that'll continue for a long time. But that's grief, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I heard a quote on the program from somebody who said, "Grief is just love that's got nowhere to go." And I just thought that was such a great quote. But actually, it was that thing that if you've got this sort of feeling and this emotion that you had for a person, a connection with a person, that connection for whatever reason is cut. And I think people do look for ways of thinking, well, how can I find a new connection with something else that gives me a sense of positivity, or that emotionally I can progress, rather than forever see it as a huge negative, which, it will always be part of that. Absolutely, it will be. But there can something positive come from this dark place.
Yeah. And I think knowing Tom and the way he was, and like what in his book and everything, he put a positive light on so much, like a positive spin, and I do take inspiration from him to do that moving forward. It's just, I just wish he was here,
Absolutely.
But yeah, like he's got two beautiful kids and a beautiful wife that we need to be there for and do positive things with and for. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and what a legacy! And I think as well, when people experience somebody who's had a condition like Tom's, they're aware of what that person is like towards the end, and that you sometimes forget, don't you, the person that you first met or the person that you live with or for X amount of time. I think as time passes, those memories sort of come back, so you remember the person who was rather than the person who sort of left, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely, and. I'll always remember just Tom as Tom. He made such an impact, and his personality was so big that it's difficult to think of anything else. So and like I say, reading his book and I've got to say as well that the care that he received at the hospice at St Christopher's, which is an NHS hospice, was absolutely incredible, and I'll forever be thankful for them to them for that. And like I say, it's so nice to be a part of this O2 and Concert for Carers. It really is. It's an honour.
Absolutely. Can I ask you about the fans who followed you for many years? Of course, everyone's got different relationships to Tom. Of course, the very, very close family, completely different relationship to the friends. And then obviously you were sort of mates, but also kind of like work colleagues, but then fans who see it from the outside. Has their interactions with you been helpful at this time? Because I guess many were so numb, they almost didn't know what to say.
Yeah, I think it's very... Obviously, I appreciate it, and it's been very touching, the amount of love that Tom created and the amount of love that is for Tom out there. Of course, when you say help, I'm not sure, because I think feelings are personal, aren't they? And grief is a feeling, and I do think that it is always quite a lonely place when you're grieving, because they're your internal feelings. But I have been really, really touched by what the messages and support that fans have showed, because it does mean a lot, and the fans mean so much to us boys, and I know that they did to Tom as well. The last thing he said on stage was, "I love you all," and he meant that as in not just the people in Liverpool. He meant that to everyone, and they do mean a hell of a lot to us.
Absolutely. Is there sort of a go-to memory of Tom, where if you're feeling particularly, down at a moment, that you remember something he did, something funny that he said? It might not be broadcastable, so go easy on this one.
Yeah, do you know what I was just about to say? I won't be able to say on it. But yeah, no, there's so many. That's why I was so lucky to have been so close to him, because he made such an impact on my life and gave me so many happy memories and happy times, and also, he gave so much towards our success. Without him, there was no way that I would have achieved what I achieved in my life, and I owe that to him.
Can I actually just, as we sort of wrap up, and thanks for your time on this one today, Max, just Friday night hits now, which is sort of a big part of your life, if you like. Music can be such a big part of it, and obviously you're on people's radios, it's radio on a Friday night, when people are sort of getting ready and gearing up, aren't they, for that sort of like that outpouring of emotion that's maybe been pent up over the week. Music can play such a big part of, if you were just doing a straightforward talk show on a Friday night, people would be like, come on, Max, bang a few tunes on. But actually, music at that point, it becomes the everything, doesn't it? It becomes a great way of emoting some of those sense of relief or happiness or joy that the weekend's here.
Absolutely. And, my show is, I'll try and keep the talking to an absolute bare minimum, and it's just literally about blasting tunes out. And I even when I'm doing the show, I'm getting up for a Friday night. Like, it proper pumps me up as well. So I think the nice thing about my show is that I feel what I want the listeners to feel. And based on people getting in touch and it really works, and I love it. I absolutely love being on that show on a Friday, and for me as well, it's like a little getaway. It's me on my own in a studio, just listening to tunes. Like, it's really therapeutic, and also what a way to start the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. But there is something in that, isn't that? You feel like you're being selfish, but you're not, because it's not just you in your room; it's you and like a million listeners or whatever. But like, that's you've got to be selfish a little bit, haven't you? To think, well, this is for me, but because it's for me, I can then give myself of something else or to something else. It sort of recharges the batteries, the emotional batteries, if you like.
Yeah, 100%. It really does. And like you said before, like music is so impactful and a lot of the time lifts spirits. So it really does lift mine. Like when I'm just sat there and just playing some massive tunes, like, and some throwbacks. That's the thing. It's hits from the past, which takes me back to childhood and stuff. And I know my mum listens in, and my nephews are with me mum on a Friday night. Like, they all sit around listening to the show, and it's just really nice, you know.
Good stuff. Is that a wake up call where they wanted? Have they moved from hits to throwbacks yet, or are they?
I don't know. You know, I don't know. I think based on our Spotify numbers, I think we're standing the test of time at the minute.
So. Yeah,
absolutely. So yeah, we're not quite in that category yet. But saying that, maybe all time low is actually, you know, that's 12 years. That's a bit of a throwback now.
That might be a throwback, and after that you become retro, and after that you become vintage, and after that antique.
Vintage, oh no.
Max, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and we'll put details to all the carers concert and things in the write up to the podcast as well. And thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thanks a lot, mate. Appreciate it.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.